And welcome back, college hockey fans, to another episode of MNCAA with our NCHC crew. It is Max Veech, and I'm Nick Maxson here to break it all down for you guys. Well, we do know a couple of things, Max. The Penrose has been awarded. Western Michigan is your first ever regular season Penrose Cup winners. So congratulations to the Broncos, but still some unfinished business to be settled below the number one seed. We're going to break that down along with our two squads, St. Cloud and UMD, who are poised for a last weekend of the regular season battle. But Max, good to see you again. As always, good to see you back at home and not traveling again because the weather outside sucks.
Yeah, we had the false spring, and now we're back into winter version 2. So I'm waiting to see if the next spring is the one that's actually going to stick around. Whereas it's the recording March 4th right now, so I have my doubts. I'm usually used to maybe one at the end of March or beginning of April, even if we're really unlucky in terms of snow falling. But if we can get away with this being the last time we get some snow sticking around, I will be thoroughly pleased with that. Not as happy as last year. I think we were, just about contemplating golfing at this time last year.
So,
But no, I'll take it for what it is. It's winter. It's going to make, real spring and the summers that much more enjoyable. And that's part of the reason that we kind of live up here. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
It's the weather of wait 5 minutes and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's how it goes. But as you mentioned, fall, spring, it's so weird too, Max, because at least the last 2 winters here, there's been very little snowfall. I think I saw something on the National Weather Service that said that St. Louis this year had more snowpack than us. I think at one time the Panhandle of Florida had more snow on the ground than the Twin Cities did
in January. Yeah,
bizarre, right? It's just weird, right? What has been weird has also been the way that NCHC season has really sort of unraveled on itself. And again, as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, it's our last weekend of regular season hockey around college hockey, not only in the NCHC. And we do, as we mentioned up top, Western Michigan taking home their first Penrose Cup. Any surprises or any sort of thoughts on that, Max, before we kind of get into our two squads?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is by far and away the biggest surprise. I mean, 1 and 2, you can make an argument for them being the biggest surprises of the year in terms of the NCHC and how it finished there. I think Brad Schlossman was talking on, I don't know if it was a different radio hit or what he was going on. I consumed too much of what he puts out, but he was saying that there was only one person that had Western Michigan voted in the top 2, I believe. For final finishes, whether it was coaches poll or media poll, one of the two at the beginning of the year. And so that one person has to be bragging somewhere. I haven't seen them doing it yet, but credit to them. I think, a lot of other people had them down in that 6, 7, 8 range just because there was a lot of unknowns. Cameron Rowe has been good this year. He was great. And they got Campton Slukinski, and he was great as well. I mean, you either one of them you throw in the net and you're better than, I would say, 95% of all other goaltenders in the country. So that paired with, Alex Bump continuing his rise to greatness, paired with just a top 5 power play, top 5 penalty kill, top 5 everything across the board, it seems. It's a winning or a recipe for winning. So I think they have to be the surprise of the year. Arizona State, yes, a lot of people thought they would struggle, especially in their first year of conference play, where you're actually having more competition week in and week out. I don't think anybody doubted the amount of talent that was on their team. I just don't think that they thought that they would be able to capitalize this much on the conference itself. So maybe it is a down year in the conference and it'll change moving forward, but you have to throw credit their way as well. So yeah, those two, it's a coin flip for me on which one I think is more surprising. But if I had to give somebody the edge, Western Michigan, and obviously capturing the Penrose for the first time, or a conference championship at all for the first time in the history of their program. Credit to them. And yeah, I think that alone maybe just swayed myself in terms of giving them the edge.
And you have to give a lot of credit to Pat Ferschweiler, again, taking over the reins from Andy Murray just a couple of seasons ago, made their first NCAA tournament appearance a couple of years ago. That's been sort of, I don't want to say the next frontier for the Broncos is now that they've also sort of captured regular season success. And they have had that the last couple of years where they've sort of finally kind of hit a wall has been in postseason play, Max. And I'm kind of curious as how this team is going to perform in the NCAA tournament. They're essentially a lock to get in at this point. Although we do have the NCHC tournament that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. It starts actually in about 10 days or so. Pretty crazy to think that we're only that far away from some very meaningful hockey. And what a perfect segue this brings us into is our two squads. Oh goodness. Maybe some surprising results this weekend. But as we talked last week, if the cards fell a certain way, the number 7 seed could be in play, and that's exactly where we stand, Max, as much to your dismay. And I do want to start with the Bulldogs because I don't know if frustrating is the right word for the weekend, but maybe it was because there were chances, I think, for UMD to take care of business both nights in regulation, and unfortunately ended up with only 4 of 6 points.
Yeah, I would say NCHC play. I think I posted this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to refer to the social media app that everybody's kind of getting most of their hockey updates on. I had posted getting 4 of 6 points in the NCHC every weekend. I think every team on the planet's going to take that. You as long as you finish 500 in NCHC play, you're feeling pretty decent about yourself most years in terms of just where you're going to stand nationally. And so yes, that's the spin zone I'm choosing to take. What I really want to say is not taking all 6 points from Miami is kind of unacceptable this year. I know that we've kind of been giving them a pass and singing their praise, and I still don't think that they're a terrible team, especially I don't think they're as bad as their record shows. But UMD's inability to finish teams off has been frustrating at times this year, and it was certainly one of those times this past weekend there. I think giving up your first goal again, it's something that's becoming a problem. I'll just say it's an issue for the Bulldogs and how they're operating right now. Sandlin has always liked playing with a lead, no matter how big or small it is. It just changes the way that he operates. And so giving that up against Miami on Friday night, not great. Luckily, it was a team that UMD is capable and was capable of coming back and winning against there. Surrendering that late third period goal on Friday, and late is a relative term, but 15-24. So there was, what's that? Just over 4 minutes left in the game. It's
36. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in because it just felt like they were playing not to lose. They had opportunities and, the goalie is going to make some saves, whatever, but they just didn't feel like they had the urgency to put another one in. They weren't trying to ice the game. They were just trying to survive more or less. And I didn't love seeing that. I would have preferred a much more aggressive approach, maybe not much more aggressive, a little bit more aggressive approach versus sit back and try and just be, play a puck possession game. And that's not to say that doesn't work either, but they need to do something else against a team like Miami in order to get it, out of reach. And they just weren't able to do that. So I would say, they took advantage early in the game. They had a major called against Miami for kneeing that led to a UMD goal. Cal Arnott put that second one in to give UMD their lead. And it just didn't do anything for them after that. And it was just a long, kind of drawn out game of chess, and maybe chess would be more exciting depending on who you're watching play. But it just drug on into overtime, and it was one of those games where you're like, oh man, I'm really hoping it doesn't go from bad to worse. And overtime against Miami is bad enough, but it didn't, thankfully. I would say that Jack Smith kind of atoned for last week's sins in terms of getting a major by scoring the overtime winner here, and it was a beauty, but much more important, impactful, pretty to watch, whatever you want to refer to it as. Max Plante's pass to him in overtime there was maybe the best pass I've seen all year. And yes, I'm absolutely biased, but splits 2 defenders basically at the blue line there. And then just a perfect saucer touch pass, leading Jack, who's kind of skating at full speed there, catches it right in stride and is able to put a move on the goalie and slide it past him as he moves right. Incredible. Like I hope Detroit wasn't watching, because I don't want anybody getting any funny ideas about getting him to to leave early. I need that kid sticking around because he's been the lifeblood of UMD for a good majority of the games this season. Not that he's the only one, but he brings a different energy out there, and his ability in overtime was certainly on display for sure. Then you get into Saturday's game, and you think, maybe they woke up a little bit, maybe they, got their butts chewed by Sandelin or whoever else, each other, and said that's not good enough. We need to go out and play better. And it started off better. I mean, they scored first this time, which was great. I had thought Shaugabay tipped it out of the middle of the air as he's crashing that, but it turns out Dom James banked it off of a couple of bodies or pieces, and it falls in the net there, which is great on senior night. For him to get one there, I think he's deserved it. He's their leading scorer on the season, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check that, but he's up there regardless. But it was similar where they're kind of playing a keep away game there. And it lasted into middle of the third period again. I think it's, just shy of 9 or 10 minutes into the middle of the third. And then Miami ties it. And it's kind of let's scramble and try and score before the game ends. And there were opportunities both ways. And I would say, as tough as it is to watch a 1-1 hockey game, sometimes this one was fun. I think both Gajan and Miami's goalie, who I'm blanking on, another great foreign player, but they both played incredibly well, and they stopped a number of grade A chances. And it was not for lack of effort from either team. They just weren't able to put the puck in the back of the net. And that's something that I think has been one of the Achilles heels for UMD the past couple of seasons. But it goes into overtime. Nobody's able to capitalize in overtime. And then it goes into a shootout, which UMD has traditionally done very well in the last couple of years anyway. And they did again. I think Max Plante scored first, and then there was an immediate response from Miami. Again, I forget who that was. And then it goes into round 9. Aaron Pionk ends up going down. We get into defensemen taking penalty shots here. Aaron Pionk goes down and puts one past, and then Gajan for the 4th or 5th time is just kind of sprawling out, putting limbs wherever they need to be and making incredible saves and got it done there. So good for him, good for them. They needed that extra point just to have a little bit more cushion, but we'll get into that. And maybe, they wanted to get that one done in regulation to get the full 3 points there for a number of reasons. But overall, on the weekend, they played fine. It was, not disappointing hockey. I think it was just uninspiring hockey. Not my ideal level of play or excitement. They just need to have that killer mentality, and I maybe they're too nice. They just need to grow up a little bit and take it to teams when they can. Quit trying to not hurt feelings and just go out there and play. But whatever. Gajan got Rookie of the Week honors in the NCHC, which has been another recurring theme for UMD. Knapp has won it. He's won it. Max Plante has won it. I think Shaugabay had won it earlier in the season as well. I don't remember, but for the amount of times they won it, they should have a really good team next year if they can keep all those rookies around, given the transfer portal and everything else that's going on. But mixed emotions there, because vibes are high in terms of getting recognized. Vibes are not high in terms of, hey, you tied Miami. Well, you took Miami to overtime twice and tied them one of those times when you need some points in order to get where you want to be. So not a ton of excitement on our end here, but you had quite a bit more happening on the road there in Denver with St. Cloud.
That's one way to phrase it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Friday into a split, right? And I mentioned that a split was probably as best as you could ask for, and that's exactly what they did. And even on Friday, kind of a close game, really. It was a 1-1 tie going into period number 2, and then St. Cloud. If there's been one Achilles heel for St. Cloud, is sometimes they play with a bit of an edge. We'll put it that way. Sure. Their penalty kill is good, but it feels like that just stalls the way that Brett Larson likes to roll his 4 lines. And Carter King and Jack Devine get goals in the second period. And if there's one thing St. Cloud has had issues at times this season has been scoring goals. Again, they're just barely, I think, even at 2.5 or sub 2.5 goals per game. And for those who follow college hockey, that just simply isn't good enough on an average throughout the season to feel comfortable. And as I said the last couple of weeks, you can see it in the way that they're playing the game. When they're trying to get offense moving, they're playing their defense a little bit more free, which is also costing them sometimes in transition. Can't do that against Denver. So they were down 3-1. And then, as we know how good a national champion is, they just simply locked it down in period 3 to take home a 3-1 win on Friday. Now, Saturday comes along. And it's a different story. Again, a low-scoring affair, Max, a 2-1 victory for St. Cloud. And if there's anything that St. Cloud should sort of reckon with is, hey, if you throw the puck from anywhere, sometimes good things happen. Both of St. Cloud's goals were kind of just weird goals, not kind of goals you expect. Matt Davis to give up. Damon Gardner, who got the scoring started, and just like you, Max, and I mean you, the Bulldogs, St. Cloud is just a different team when they play with the lead, right? Gardner essentially from almost the goal line to the essentially the blocker side of Matt Davis just was chasing down a puck that was essentially a dump, and he just decided, screw it, I'm going to throw it at the net. And he somehow finds a way to get through the pads of Davis. So that was kind of a goofy one. And then Jack Devine answers on the power play in the second period. This is what I liked most. Just a minute 10 later, Werner Miettinen, Colin Ralph, it's a play from the left point. He's actually looking for a high slot tip, which he does get, by the way, off Barrett Hall. And then pinballs off the skate of Werner Miettinen. These are the kind of bounces that St. Cloud just has not gotten at all throughout this last little stretch. And it was good to see that they kind of got a couple that you could argue is like, okay, these were lucky kind of goals. But you don't create those chances unless you're just doing the simple things, which is just throwing the puck towards the net. It's a cliche, it's a broken record, but just sometimes you can get a bounce, and they got 2 on Saturday. And then Isaac Posh, goaltender of the week yet again for the 4th time this season, showing why he was so valuable to this team. Again, shutting down the Denver offense, which put on quite a bit of rubber towards him. The rest of that game was able to hold it to a 2-1 win. And more so, and this is where we're going to get into the fun of this, gave St. Cloud 3 points. We talked how if UMD took care of business with 6 points, that would lock the 7th seed in for the Bulldogs. It's only 5, Max, which means St. Cloud with 6 points could leapfrog Duluth into the 7th seed, which as of right now is occupied by Arizona State. They are 6 points clear of Nebraska Omaha. And how about this, Max? We're going to talk a little bracketology here. Omaha is 6 points behind, but the tiebreaker is conference wins. And guess how many Nebraska Omaha has? 13. The Sun Devils have 14. So if they get 2 wins in regulation this weekend, they would be the 2nd place team. So this is going to get interesting, Max. And let's just, because I'd like to rag on you a little bit. St. Cloud and Duluth have been, at least in recent couple of years, that has been a series which has really been owned by the home team. The last 4 in Amsoil, UMD's won all 4. St. Cloud, the 4 previous to that, Huskies were 3-1, and I believe that only loss was in overtime, going back to 2023. So it's been a roller coaster ride for those. And actually, nope, I lied. It was a 5-1 loss that was not close for that 1 loss out of 4. But this is where it's a clash of 2 different squads, right? You have a young, budding, upcoming Bulldog squad, which we've hailed right over the last couple of weeks here on our show, of showing signs of putting together. I think last night or last weekend, you could almost argue, I don't want to say it was a step back, but it was another weekend where it's a growing and it's an opportunity weekend, right?
For sure.
For St. Cloud, finally shredding a program's record-setting winless streak, has now 2 wins in their past 3. again on the road in Denver, the reigning national champions. That's no easy feat there. So there's some confidence there. What do you see out of this matchup as we preview what is the Bulldogs versus the Huskies coming up in St. Cloud this weekend?
Yeah, I don't want to only get an overtime loss, but if that's all it takes to get 1 point, and that's all that UMD needs to stay clear of St. Cloud, that's my floor for the weekend. If we can get that, I will be okay. And the only reason I say that is because that 7 seed right now is incredibly important, because that 8 seed is going to Western Michigan. They're going to play in Lawson at the zoo, and it is a different animal there versus just about anywhere else in the NCHC. North Dakota's, atmosphere overall might be better. The student section is a little bit worse. There's, you're picking battles there. But I would say Lawson is an incredibly fun place to play, especially right now for the home team. And if you can avoid going there, it's going to make your life a lot easier. And I'm not saying that Arizona State's fans or Omaha's fans, in the rare instance that or the off chance that they win and get up there, I'm not saying that those are bad spots to play either. In fact, it's probably significantly nicer to travel there and just kind of get out of the colder weather and miscellaneous garbage that Duluth or St. Cloud is probably dealing with right now. But it's just a different atmosphere. There's something that gives you a little bit more hope playing against those teams where you might not have it before. I think UMD in their games with Arizona State previously this year, they showed that they match up significantly better against them than they do against a Western Michigan team. That might be because UMD struggles to score unless they've got, a 100% grade A open guy on the backside of a goaltender or something else. And Western's got 2 incredible goaltenders, or because they have some defensive lapses that Western Michigan is probably more well equipped to take advantage of than anybody else in conference. So it certainly would benefit UMD to be in that 7 seed and match up with either Arizona State or Omaha. Omaha is another tough customer for them to match up against, just because of the size more than anything, and the overall age and experience that UMD just lacks. Those are 2 complete opposite teams. I think they were just swept by them a couple of weeks ago as well. So Arizona State's the team that UMD wants to face, which is an incredibly silly thing to be saying out loud, just given some of the teams that Arizona State has beat this year. But it's their best opportunity to advance in the NCHC playoffs and kind of make a little bit of a run. So when we're talking about this weekend and the task at hand here, without looking too far ahead, St. Cloud State is no team that you can overlook either. Yes, you're ahead of them in the standings. Yes, you swept them earlier this year. Yes, you've got, a winning record in the last 4 or whatever. I don't think that matters at all. I mean, both Brett Larson and Scott Sandelin know each other well. They were coached together for years, and they played together or against one another for, a significant time on top of that. So there's no unfamiliarity with what each one of them or either one of them wants to do. And game planning against that is difficult, because it's, do you know where your strengths are and play to them, or do you know what the other team's weaknesses are and play to that? You're lucky if you match up and you can do both, but I don't know that either of these teams have something where they match up perfectly with a strength and a weakness on the other side. So the 5 points for St. Cloud is certainly within reach. I think they're playing much, much better hockey. You're talking about 2 splits in the last 2 weekends against ranked teams, where UMD has, a couple of losses against North Dakota and some ties against a struggling Miami team. They're certainly not firing on all cylinders. So if St. Cloud is going to take advantage of it, this might be their chance to do it.
And I like how you pointed out the significance of the 7th seed, Max, because let's be frank, I think both teams understand that, I think they're looking ahead at what is now, again, as we talked to maybe a month or so ago, the last ever frozen faceoff at the XL Energy Center. So if your pathway to get there is through one of those teams right now, Western Michigan, again, they really handled St. Cloud not that long ago in Kalamazoo. So that is not a good matchup. I don't think anybody wants. And for both of our squads, right, there is one path to get to the NCAA tournament, and that is you have to win the NCHC frozen faceoff. That is just the reality of where they're at. And I really do feel like this is going to be a playoff type feel between these two squads, which if you're in UMD's position, I do think there is an advantage there because, like you said, you take one game to overtime, that's over with at that point.
Yeah.
So for St. Cloud, I think for us, if there's any sort of thing that you can take advantage of, is a bit of the size. I think the youth of UMD can be a point of exploitation. Now, granted, it was a 0 factor when they were up in Duluth not that long ago. But also going back to that matchup, there was no Isaac Posh. There was no, I believe Cooper Wiley was out. Roseboro, I believe, was also injured either in that series or prior to that. This team has looked completely different with all of their bodies healthy and in the lineup. And I do think it's going to come down to shocking goaltending in this series. It kind of always has been sort of where both these coaches, they start with their best player in back and then they fill it out in front of them. Right. So, and I kind of think too that both these teams are going to play desperate. I think UMD, if there's any bad news for St. Cloud, is you're going to have a very sour taste in your mouth if you're the Bulldogs going back on that film against Miami, understanding you had an opportunity there to not even allow an open door for St. Cloud this weekend. But again, you can have confidence that you beat them twice already. Now, to what you said, should it matter? Does it matter? Probably not. This is a different Husky team than it was even just 3 weeks ago. And again, the Huskies know that this is essentially a tune-up for whoever they're going to have to play. It's going to be a tough opponent regardless of where they travel to. And so at the end of the day, you're going to have to really continue to build off these last 2 weekends to try to give yourself a good spot. So I don't know what to expect. Again, home ice has been good in general for the Huskies. I think that the bigger ice sheet can be a difference maker, particularly in this series, but hard to say. I'd love to be more confident, but the way that this team is still essentially trying to pick themselves back up to me has me a bit worried about where their mentality is going into this. And I just kind of hope that the team plays with an edge, but it's restrained and within not a parade to the penalty box per se, Max, because if there's one thing we've noticed, especially with certain players on the Husky squad, they play a little bit on the edge, but sometimes they do kind of tip over that. They can put the team in a bit of a position where you're on the PK. And let's put it this way. UMD's power play has always kind of bit the Huskies and really the NCHC in years past. Max, I want to get your opinion on this because your power play, I believe, is over 21% on the season. Is that not right?
Just dropped down below 20.9 now.
20.9. Oh, just 0.1%. My goodness. St. Cloud's penalty kill is still pretty good, around 85%, but I just don't think you want to. Again, we talk about special teams and how much more important it becomes at this time of the year. It may come down to that more so if you're St. Cloud not having to go to special teams, because the power play has also been not good for St. Cloud. It's been better, but they still aren't able to really execute on that. Whereas I think special teams, if you're able to bait the Huskies, for lack of a better phrase, into maybe taking some undisciplined penalties, that could really bring UMD to an advantage. I know. Do you see an advantage there in special teams for the Bulldogs?
Yeah, the advantage is that St. Cloud's power play is bottom 12 in the country, it looks like right now. So I don't want to say that you are free to take penalties or whatever, but penalties have been a problem for UMD, especially lately. I think they've had a major in each of the last 4 weekends, and they certainly can't afford one of those in a situation where they're playing for a conference standing. So if they can just get away with under 3 penalties a night and they keep them all to minors, that's an acceptable range. You don't want to say no penalties because then kids are afraid to go out and, play hard or go into corners or do anything with their stick. And that's not what you want either, because then that just opens you up for being taken advantage of as you sit on the back of your skates. So under 3 penalties, all minors, I think that UMD is in a pretty decent spot there. Especially if they are able to capitalize on the power play. And they've had a lot of good looks on the power play. I would say I would like to see him much closer to that, 25% range on capitalizing on that. But that's like saying, hey, I want a top 10 offense, which is not something that everybody can have. So I'm totally okay with, the 21-22% range that they've been sitting at throughout the year. They have been getting a few more looks at it recently, and I think that is just coming with growing as a team and finding out where the set pieces are working on the ice for people. Some people are, fanning on shots on the backside. Some people are preferring to take them, as they approach up the middle from the defensive position. Some people are, they've each got their own preferences, and they're finding out what works. What hasn't been working is shooting it directly into the shin pads of somebody that's in front of you, despite the fact that you've got a guy open on the sides. If they can avoid doing that again, I think everybody that's a UMD fan will be much, much happier. It seems like that's been a favorite shot for players to take from the point, whether they're offensive or defensive players. So fixing that is going to be something, but just getting to the goal, not being afraid to just put in the greasy goals. They don't all have to look pretty, and that's kind of where UMD's bread and butter was made. In those couple of back-to-back championship runs. And no, they don't have the bodies to do it, but you don't need the bodies if you're on the power play and can get better positioning as well. So being smart about that is where they're going to have to take advantage of St. Cloud should they be given the opportunity.
And Max, I want to ask you, Zam Plante, he was injured the week previous. Is there any update on his status at all prior to the weekend?
Yeah, it sounds like Billy Guerin and Scott Sandlin have been kind of sharing notes on their reports for injured players. It's a week to week, day to day. They're injured, they can't play. They just they're not going to be able to tell you a day that they're going to be back practicing in full or playing, because if they don't meet that deadline, then everybody's going to be asking, oh, what was the setback? What's wrong? They're just guessing. So. It didn't sound like it was something that was going to be super serious. It didn't sound like anything that his brother had gone through at the beginning of the year, but it was something that needed to be worked through, and he wasn't able to get on the ice against Miami. So fingers crossed that we're going to get to see him. I think, especially given the state of affairs in terms of where UMD's season is sitting right now, he wants to be out there. It's not something that he's just going to be sitting out because he feels like he's got the extra time to do it. So if he can play and get his way through something, he'll be out there playing.
I would expect nothing less than, shall I say, someone named Plante, and also a Hermantown native going into some college hockey, very meaningful hockey again, as again, still a lot to play for here in this last regular season matchup here. And let's kind of go through the NCHC here, Max, because again, this is a big weekend for a lot of squads as we pull up that schedule for the rest of the league. How about this? So the gold pan, right, is always there. Colorado College and Denver, they flip-flop home and home. And that weekend, that should be pretty good. Again, CC came up in the USCHO poll. They're now 20th. So kind of getting back to where they were in the preseason poll. Again, they had a dip at the middle of the season. They've been playing better as of late. Good to see them kind of get back to rising. How about this? So North Dakota and Omaha, my goodness gracious, that could be quite the battle between those two squads. As I'm going to pull up the NCHC standings here. How about this? So North Dakota is at 39 points, tied with Denver. So they're on the 5th place spot, as Denver has the tiebreaker as the record between squads. Omaha is just 2 points ahead. So there is a home ice spot that is up for grabs in that matchup, Max. And you know what? I will say this. If there's one matchup that for whatever reason has been able to just completely, shall we say, memorize North Dakota, it's been Omaha at Ralph Engelstad Arena for the last couple of seasons, and I don't know what it is. I'm all for it. Let's be honest. But it is interesting because just the style that Nebraska Omaha plays, they've been one of the few teams really in college hockey that has found consistent success at the Ralph. I just want to get your take on what do you expect out of this matchup, because this is going to be, I think, a barn burner up there in Grand Forks.
Omaha's goaltending has been their lifeblood. When they're winning, their goalie's playing fantastic. When they're losing, he's giving up goals that maybe you would expect to be going in. He's not goalieing anybody. He's not sitting hot. And that's certainly going to be the number one and most important factor, which sounds stupid to say. Obviously, if you have a goalie that's playing out of his mind, you're going to be better off regardless of how the rest of your team is playing. But that goes to to show kind of what they've been relying on, and limiting shots is going to be a big part of that as well. If he doesn't have to be fantastic for, or sorry, let me rephrase that. If he only has to be fantastic for 30 shots versus 45, it's a lot easier to produce a good game on that level. So Omaha, being the big-bodied older team that they are, is going to have to push around your EJ Emery, your Sasha Boisvert, your all the young guys on North Dakota's team, and kind of take advantage of that size. And I don't want to say play keep away, because that's not going to help you score, but figure out a way to get ahead and then just stay ahead. And that's contrary to what I said about UMD's game plan and what I like to see. But I think Omaha is more suited to play that style of hockey right now. And if they can do that, I think that they're in a decent spot to maybe jump them and take over some important ground.
Yeah, and it really would be just one win if Nebraska Omaha is able to split. They would be in the home ice position. Denver and Colorado College, my goodness. I mean, Denver is not safe at all right now. So if they split, and let's just say CC sweeps Denver, Denver would be out of a home ice spot. So there's still a lot that can happen here. And I do have to bring up one kind of not so fun point here, and that is Miami and Western Michigan. I think we all know where this is likely to head. Just based on the performances of both squads. It's going to get written about. I want to get your thoughts on this, Max, because I don't think it's going to be fair that it will be written about, because it's going to be a winless conference season if it plays out the way that we think it will. We have been, we shouldn't say praising, but we've been saying, hey, look at the bigger story with Miami here. The win-losses, we know what that is, right? It's been tough, but this team has competed. They haven't rolled over at all during the season. It's a tough conference. So my question to you, Max, is pretty simple, and that is, if you're head coach Anthony Noreen, and if you cannot pick up a win against Western Michigan this weekend, and you have to face the microphones in an 0-24 conference season results, what are you saying to the media? And more so, maybe, what are you maybe saying to your recruits as they're looking at a program that they verbally committed to and are seeing that result, and maybe have some thoughts on what's going on there?
Yeah, my message is going to be completely different depending on who I'm talking to. One, you can't say trust the process anymore, because I just take a look at what's going on in Philadelphia with that basketball team. I think that phrase is out of the lexicon of people that are serious about keeping their jobs and improving a team. And maybe that's not fair of me to say, because there's injuries and other things going into that, but it's just something that I hear over and over again. And I feel like it's been 8 years that we've heard trust the process, and the process has not worked. But what I'm saying to the media is, this we're playing with what we've got right now. I don't want to put the blame on anybody else. This isn't my team. This isn't my recruits. This is something else that we're trying to figure out, play the best with what we have. And that's the reality of the situation, regardless of what people want to say. Is that what they're going to say? No, they're going to find a much more elegant way or eloquent way of saying that, so that they don't, hurt the feelings, sounds so soft, but so that they don't impact the mental fortitude that some of the older players that are on the team have. But what I'm saying to my recruits and everybody else is, look, at Miami went 0-24 this year. If they have a 500 record next year, that is an astronomical climb that you can be a part of. You can be a name that helped turn Miami around. That's going to get you more national attention than somebody that's going from a 500 team to a 20-win team over a season. Yes, the 20-win team is fun, but if you're talking about being recognized for the work that you're putting in, there's no better spot to do it than Miami, because your expectations are so low and your ceiling is probably going to be so high, given some of the recruits that we've seen, that any turnaround is going to seem that much more impressive. So they do have a good culture. It's a fun place to play. They just have not been able to find the wins there, and it's coming. I know it is. You know it is. We've talked about it, and the recruits just kind of have to believe. And I'm sure there is some sort of a conversation behind closed doors where coach and staff are talking with some of these recruits, and they may have some questions fairly about the direction of the program, but based on everything I've seen from Noreen and his confidence and just his kind of persona, I don't see any of the guys kind of opting out or buying somebody else's coach talk at a different place just because it's a different place. So that's my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on how it might be different?
I will say this. Because I also, in my brief interactions with Noreen, both in the NCHC, the preseason media day, and then also at St. Cloud, he's a prideful coach. He's a passionate coach. He cares about his players. And I know you wanted to stay away from the trust the process thing because I don't think that message works right now, right? But I do think he has implemented, and you can see it again. Nearly, they took Colorado College to overtime after scoring 4 goals in the third to make it happen. So he is motivating players to at least give it their all in what is a very difficult mental space for athletes in that position to be in already. So I would say this to his recruits. I mean, you pretty much have this off season to kind of go, you know what? This is my first full year now. We're bringing in the guys that I think can play the way that I want to play. Last year was not fun. We made strides on the ice. We're implementing different systems, right? And we're still adjusting, but I'm bringing you in to be a piece of the bigger puzzle. I think that's maybe more of, at least from my perspective, maybe sort of the selling point of that. But also too, then to the media, and that is, look, listen, it's, we can focus on the record, but we can also focus on the way we played, and I think he's going to be a coach that is proud that his team, and I would concur on this if he actually said it this way, they never backed down. I mean, they gave your team, again, 2 extra sessions to pull it off. Again, I nearly come from behind win against Colorado College. This team did not quit. And that's something that is a difference from the Chris Bergeron years, where I feel like his messaging got stale. I feel like he wasn't able to get the buy-in at a level that I think he needed to. And that's not to say that he's not a bad coach, right? I mean, he had success at Bowling Green. We talked about X's and O's, and being managing of relationships is completely 2 different skill sets. And I just think he didn't have the other one, whereas I think Noreen has both. And I think that's going to be something he'll have to lean into a little bit. It's something that, again, he's going to have to answer the bell for. I don't really think he should have to. But at the end of the day, it's the way that the world works. He will have to probably figure out some way where his messaging, because you could take that also as an opportunity to say, like you said, we can't really get worse, right? We can only go up from here. And he's got 14, I think, or 15 recruits verbally committed, most of them in the USHL, and they're not bad recruits. That's the other thing, right? So depending on his retention, and I think that's the other key here, is if he can retain some of his better talent that isn't aging out, and then add in what will likely be probably a pretty big freshman class. You'll probably have to dip into the transfer portal a little bit. And I think that with his pedigree that he built in the USHL as head coach of Tri-City and other opportunities, I even think if he does lose some of his current players that were on this year's roster, I think he does have at least the ability to attract good talent, whether it's through the transfer portal or others maybe not necessarily committed at the moment, to get on board with his systems and make an impact next year. So not much different really. But I do think he's going to have to be careful how he treads it, right? Because you don't want to, shall we say, focus on what the media is going to want him to focus on, rather than use it as a way to say, we're turning a page. We wrote a chapter. It wasn't the way we wanted to go. There's a lot of pages left to write on. So I don't know, but hoping that maybe they don't have to talk about it. We'll just put it that way. There's still a couple hockey games to play. It's going to be tough, but that would not be a story that I would like to see Miami have to, and the NCHC really have to speak for. Let's take a macro picture here, Max, as we kind of wrap things up here. The rest of college hockey, of course, the Gophers, they win another Big Ten championship. Do we have to mention Isaac Howard?
So here's the thing: the Gophers won the Big Ten championship over Michigan State. Michigan State stumbled in the last couple of weeks here, giving up some games that they probably shouldn't have,
right?
And Minnesota took advantage of that. So credit to them for another regular season trophy. I'm still waiting for a Big Ten team to get it done in the playoffs. That's not shade. That's me hoping it happens eventually. If UMD is not going to be there this year, sure, yeah, they can have it this year. Isaac Howard, when he wins the Hobey Baker this year, because he did win the scoring title for the Big Ten, he's going down in the record book. There's going to be former teams. UMD is going to be listed there. He is an alumni of UMD. You cannot escape that or hide it or take it away from us. Bulldog once, Bulldog for life. It's going in the record again. UMD already owns more Hobey Baker winners than anybody else in the country. Add another one to the list.
The salt is percolating from salt.
That's my official stance.
Right on the Wagyu beef there. My goodness.
Yeah.
But congratulations to him. Again, Isaac Howard, again, a reason why Tampa was high on him to pick him, I think, in the first round, I believe, just a couple of years ago. Another couple of big ones. Quinnipiac dominating out east as well. Holy Cross and Sacred Heart battling for number one in the AHA. And then this is kind of surprising. Alaska sweeping Augustana. Max, I'll just put it this way. Yeah. First of all, Augustana. I mean,
yeah, they had such a good start to the season. I just don't know where I'm going to rank them next year coming in. I think that they are poised to make a good, solid run again moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just don't know if it's going to be as consistent because they had so many good, big wins this year that I don't know that they're going to be able to replicate that, even if they have the same level of talent on their team. So the results might not be there. It will be, very similar to Arizona State, and maybe they will have a very similar result, but a full year of conference play versus a partial year of conference play is going to be a difference maker in terms of how they're represented nationally and within their own conference as well. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, yet to be seen. I think that they've got a good building, a good coaching staff, a good, early young threat to other teams or an attractiveness that maybe some Atlantic kids want to come over. I don't know, but they're doing something right there. And, I think that it's good for college hockey to have another Western team be, on a rising, increasing scale there, but also good for the CCHA, which has had a relatively down year compared to what they're used to seeing in terms of quality teams. So getting some quality wins, always going to be good. I think that Augustana just needs to find a way to keep doing it. I would say Alaska's most recent, both Alaska teams, their most recent strings have not been as fruitful. And one of that is due to the pairwise kind of kicking them out at the last minute last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember.
That was just 2 years ago. That was
so.
Yep.
That's been as close as they've been in a long time. And I, again, don't want to see them going away. So the more teams that we can get successful out west, the more Western expansion we're going to see, whether it's your California teams or Oregon or Washington or what's the Las Vegas one? I can't remember.
UNLV.
They're logically the probably the next one that's coming up. I love it. I know that they're not traditional hockey communities, but they don't have to be. I mean, nobody really thinks about some of these other schools for other sports,
right? That was in the for a while. And at the end of the day, Max, and there are some. We talked about this very briefly it's been a while now, but the NAHL, so the NAHL,
Yeah.
potentially, essentially almost establishing an entire division out west, potentially eight teams. This was a report from Kevin Weeks. I think at the turn of the calendar year that sort of came out. Now, whether or not that is coming to fruition and whether or not that's sooner than later, I don't know if we know the details of that, but we see this with sports is that sometimes it's a trickle up effect, really, is to make it successful. And if it's tier 2 junior that starts it, and then UNLV, which has been a successful club team, we talked about them quite a bit on our podcast, goes. Again, Oregon, potentially Oregon State, Washington, right? San Diego State has a pretty good one. So does UCLA. So there's opportunity there. I kind of get the sense that someone is waiting for somebody to make the jump and to make it happen, right? And from what I know is before Arizona State really, before they took the jump and then after they took the jump, I do know that UNLV, San Diego, and UCLA were essentially looking at the success of the program, not just from a win-losses perspective, but also from a sustainability standpoint as well, with money and everything else. And you could almost even throw the Golden Knights into that realm, especially with UNLV, Pat Foley. He knows what he's doing out there. Hockey is exploding in the desert out there in terms of its popularity. So that's been a positive. So you kind of think, well, the youth hockey systems, whether it's college or junior, somebody's going to have to start emerging as more opportunities. I think we're heading in that direction. Could it be Idaho? Could it be Wyoming that joins, again, smaller schools? But I'm thinking bigger picture here, right, Max? At the end of the day, if you want this game to grow, someone's going to have to take the leap of faith. And right now that just hasn't happened yet on the West Coast. And
what's the football conference that we're talking about? North Dakota's in and all these other.
Is that the Summit League, right?
The Summit League, yeah. There's probably some other Summit League teams that may have some other connections where you're sharing some overlap in terms of your athletic director and knowledge about just other sports. I would need to look and see who the most likely candidate is out of there, but that would make sense. I know that there was some early talks or speculation about whether or not the NCHC would turn into the Summit League. I don't think that'll ever happen just because of the strength that the NCHC already has. But it was a conversation. So to reverse that and maybe have some of the Summit League teams come into an NCHC, as far as hockey is concerned, I don't know that they're going to take over the other sports, but that might be a possibility.
I don't see it. I just don't. And the reason why I say that is the NCHC would have to be in some sort of fiscal scenario. They would have to also be where they haven't won championships in a while, that the interest in the sport has gone down. I just think right now, because college hockey is such a unique situation, a unique setup, that
for sure
I've heard that. To me, I just think that although it's not impossible, right? Because we've seen crazier things happens, RIP WCHA, where to me, I just feel like, and I know that somebody that used to lead the NCHC is also now heading up the Summit League in that regards. I just feel like there's too much knowledge, and I don't know if respect is the right word, but I just don't think that crossover there actually works for either side. I kind of feel like it's, you kind of like, as far as college hockey versus basketball really is, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. It actually works to be separate. Now, granted, over the course of time with NIL and different things, could that maybe force a different scenario? Sure. I just don't think we're nowhere close to that as we stand right now. And who knows, that could change in 5-10 years, right? Again, with that college athletics, which was amateur, definitely not amateur anymore, as the latest rulings have come to fruition, Max. So with that being said, one last thing I want to look at is the pairwise, because again, that is the golden rule. I want to get your breakdown on this right now. Boston College at number 1, no surprise there. Michigan State at number 2, the Gophers at 3rd, the Black Bears of Maine again at number 4. These would be the number 1 seeds if the selection show Sunday was to happen today. Western Michigan, who just won the Penrose, is sitting at 5. Providence At 6, BU, Boston University. At 7, Connecticut, Ohio State, and Denver round out the top 10. Michigan, the Wolverines, which was kind of fluctuated up and down, is now at 11th, a bit more comfortable. They're certainly not solid there, but they're in a better spot. UMass also at 12, Quinnipiac at 13, Penn State at 14, and they're on the edge of the plateau there. UMass, Lowell, and Arizona State 15, 16, Minnesota State at 17. But Max, we know how this goes. It's couple bids for the conference tournament winners. So right now you have the cut line at 14, which means Minnesota State, which is at 17, Sacred Heart, if they were to win their conference, would be the two other auto bids that would take down some at-large bids. So Penn State, Quinnipiac, technically, I guess, and UMass all sort of not safe at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, your minimum cut line right now, just based on Quinnipiac, Western, Michigan State, and Boston College being your 4 auto bids, or at-large bids from respective conferences already being above the cut line. Minnesota State at 17, Sacred Heart at 21 are your next two from your CCHA and your Atlantic Hockey. Those two going in are going to take out 15 and 16, and you get one upset, quote unquote upset, in your other conferences that have teams above that line, and you cut out Penn State at 14. You have 2 upsets, and Quinnipiac, I mean, they would get cut out, but they wouldn't. So Massachusetts would get cut out, and they're sitting at 12. So it's crazy to say that somebody that's in the 12 slot, just given where Quinnipiac is, might not be safe. But it's also not crazy to say that anybody outside of Western or Denver is going to win the NCHC. You've got a lot of quality teams in Arizona State or North Dakota or Omaha. They're great in conferences here. They could win that easily. You're talking about the Big Ten, maybe not quite as likely. Penn State being the lowest of the ones that I would consider a real contender to win that one, already sitting at 14, so that doesn't really affect it there. And then a Hockey East team. I mean, we've seen teams go on runs in Hockey East and make some noise there. And I don't see that that's unrealistic. Attainable, maybe unrealistic, but not unattainable. And then the ECAC, if Quinnipiac makes it to the championship game, they're not going to drop down in the rankings at all, but they lose to a Cornell or somebody else, there's another spot right there. So yeah, it's going to be a tough road here. I think Arizona State being at 16, they've got to win. They maybe not win out, but they're sitting idle this week, so they're going to have to make a significant push in the NCHC tournament, maybe all the way to the championship game. Whether or not they win it, it's a whole different thing. But in order to climb the standings, they've got to win quite a few more games, and they are getting a lot more respect this year than they did last year. Yep. It would be disappointing for them, the coaching staff and everybody else, to fall into the exact same position where you're eliminated based on some pairwise standings here or automatic qualifiers. So they're unfortunately still sitting at that same range. So different story, same result maybe for them this year, unless they can make it to that championship game. And that's kind of the way I see it playing out. So it's looking like 6 from Hockey East, 4 or 5 from Big Ten, 3 maybe, likely only 2 from the NCHC, and then you're filling in the gaps with a couple of the other ones, and we'll just throw a couple of random ones in there as well. So pretty heavy on your traditional powerhouses that you're going to see in the NCAA tournament, just much more heavy on the Hockey East side this year versus maybe NCHC in the past couple of years prior to this.
A lot of that also the NCHC kind of beating up on each other. And again, that's where there's kind of a wild card with the NCHC, right? You could have someone come out that's outside of Arizona State, Western Michigan, Denver, win the NCHC conference and really throw a pairwise selection for a spin. If, shall we say, hey, the Bulldogs, St. Cloud, they can make a push. So could North Dakota, right? You can really almost make an argument for any one of the 8 teams in the NCHC to go on a run. It's not impossible for it to happen. And that's going to be something to watch, Max. We'll put it that way.
Every one of them has been ranked in the top 20 at some point this year. Yes, UMD was ranked there to start the season, sure, and having the back stands. But doesn't matter. My point still stands.
It's still possible. That's right. And it shows that I think this is where, despite where things have gotten us to this point where we stand, is that it becomes irrelevant come playoff time. It really does. Max, any parting thoughts before we send it off on to the end of the episode?
Parting thoughts. I keep bringing up that Western Michigan new arena. It's going to be tough to see Kalamazoo leave, but or sorry, not Kalamazoo. When we're talking about Lawson, it's going to be tough to see them leave. I still need to get the updated timeline and schedule on when that's going to happen. So, if one of our teams is going to be going out there to play it, regardless of who it is, I think that everyone in that fan base should maybe take a second look at their calendar and see if they can make the trip out there, because Lawson's not going to be around forever. And that might be one of the last 2 or 3 chances that you get to go out and see a hockey game there. And it's a crazy atmosphere. So I'm sure it's not the last time I'll bring that up, but felt like it was appropriate to say now, and maybe we remind folks next week as well.
I'm actually trying to look at, I'm actually on the Western Michigan website here real fast to see if I can't get an official timeline for this project, and it does look like it's going to share basketball and volleyball as well. And if this is from now the Western Herald, so this is I believe the student newspaper on the campus of Western Michigan, at least as it was reported at its announcement. This is about a year ago, February of 2024, slated to be in completion for the 2027 28 season, as it just broke ground in just this past November 2024. It's a $300 million new arena. Pretty crazy stuff. So St. Cloud, I'm looking at you. That way. So with that being said, Max, thank you. And all of us that are watching on YouTube and listening on your favorite podcast platform, for Max Veech, I'm Nick Maxson. Thank you for watching NCHC on MNCAA.